الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. عباد الله، أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله وطاعته، وأحذركم وإياي عن عصيانه تعالى ومخالفة أمره. يقول الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: من عمل صالحا فلنفسه ومن أساء فعليها وما ربك بظلام للعبيد. My dear brothers and sisters, let us begin by entering into a state of worship of Allah, a state of remembrance. We do this by emptying our hearts and our minds from all the thoughts and emotions that distract us, the thoughts that course through our minds, the feelings and emotions that course through our hearts. Just empty it completely, still yourself, and feel the peace and presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your hearts. And this state of presence, we then do an imaginary sajda, and in which we bear witness that there is no God but Allah. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. We bear witness that there is no God but God, the one God. No partner has He. And we complete this testimony by bearing witness that our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is his servant, his messenger. أشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله النبي المعتبر. The recognized prophet, the expected prophet, the last and final prophet, who came to summarize and to give us in a final form the one message of God, the one message of God that God eternally and repeatedly revealed through all of his prophets and messengers from the beginning of time. Allah commands us and urges us to be mindful of him, brothers and sisters, to be obedient to his commands, to be mindful of his justice, and to be expectant of his mercy. And he warns us not to be unmindful or flippant in our ignoring of his prohibitions. For Allah has said, whoever does good does it to his own good. Whoever commits a wrong does it against his own soul. And your Lord is not unjust to us. He is not unjust to his servants. My dear brothers and sisters, last Friday, the Turkish government announced that it would reverse the decision by Kemal Atatürk in 1931 to shut down and close down the Hagia Sophia as a mosque. And his later decision, 4 years later in 1935, to convert it into a museum. For the last 85 years now, or more like 80, almost 90 years, it has not been functioning as a mosque. And of course, this was an object of great pain to the Muslim Ummah. But not so much the Hagia Sophia as much as it was even the end of the Ottoman Caliphate. Even though it was not really ruling over all of the Ummah, it was an important symbol. As I've often said in my writings and my speeches before, it is the analogy if Mussolini had shut down the Vatican and completely ended it during the Second World War. This is more or less what happened in Turkey. Now, the current reversion of Hagia Sophia back into a mosque elicited a lot of negative reactions, understandably. Negative reactions from Western countries, most especially from Orthodox Christian leaders or from nations that contain a majority of Orthodox Christians, such as Greece and Russia, homes to the Greek and the Russian Orthodox churches. Some of them have asserted that this would create a deeper hostility between Christians and Muslims. Now, the reasons for this understandable Western reaction this negative reaction, is that this beautiful building, this magnificent building, was originally built as a cathedral by the Orthodox Christian Emperor of Byzantium, Justinian I. Byzantium, which covers the area now known as Turkey, was the eastern region of the Roman Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire. The construction of this cathedral, of the Hagia Sophia, was begun in 531 AD and was completed in 537 AD. Now it's almost 40 years before our Prophet Muhammad was born, was when it was begun. When the Ottoman Sultan, known as Muhammad or Mehmet as the Turks pronounce it, the second, also known as Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror, conquered Constantinople in 1453, he converted the Hagia Sophia from a cathedral into a mosque. The city of Constantinople, named after Constantine, the first Roman emperor who adopted Christianity and made Rome the capital of the Roman Catholic Church. The city of Constantinople, after that, became known by its Turkish pronunciation, Istanbul, which is analogous to the difference between Al-Qahira and Cairo, the Arabic and the English pronunciation of the same city, Cairo al-Qahira. When asked to comment on the criticism from the European Union, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said, "This is a matter that concerns Turkey's sovereign rights," and added and noted actually that there were several mosques in Spain, which is a member of the European Union, that have been converted into churches. Many of you know and have perhaps visited mosques such as the Cordoba Mosque in Cordoba, Spain, which was made into a church and now is a museum. There are media reports in the two media that I read, the New York Times and the Washington Post. The New York Times report added that Mr. Erdogan, President Erdogan, was so shaken with emotion after making the announcement that he did not sleep until the first light of the next morning, adding that what he thought of as an era of humiliation had ended. Now, the media articles did not delve into this idea of humiliation and how deep this humiliation was that the Ottomans and the Turks, and in fact the whole Ummah, experienced at the hand of Kemal Atatürk. Atatürk did what no foreign power in the previous centuries did. He shut down mosques. He shut down and closed down Sufi orders. He changed the Turkish script, which was written in the Arabic script, like Urdu and Persian. He changed it to the Roman script. He forced Turks to wear Western clothes. And he publicly burned many invaluable Muslim manuscripts. Essentially, it was seen throughout the whole Ummah as an attempt to strip Turks from their Islamic heritage, from their religious heritage, and any attachment to their Arabic language, their Arabic heritage. As I said, imagine if Persian and Urdu were changed into being written in Roman letters, and Pakistanis were forced by the British or forbidden, or somebody forbade them from wearing kameez sherwals. It took a Turk to obliterate that aspect of Turkish heritage and history. Foreigners could not do it. This explains the humiliation that the New York Times refers to, although it did not really go into greater detail in specifying these acts of religious humiliation and why the Ummah felt such a humiliation. The Times and the other media reports reported on those who rely on tourism, who are fearful that this would reduce tourism and the expected income that they make from it. Many of you will be curious to know of what our decision is. I personally am very much in support of this decision. And the following is our argument. I've often said that we are to live our lives from and with a God-centric perspective. And we shall examine this decision by the Turkish government based and judged on such a God-centric and spiritual perspective. Now let's look at how this story began. When the Emperor Justinian embarked upon building the Hagia Sophia Cathedral before the time of the Prophet Muhammad, it was done for the purpose of the glorification of God. Any structure that is established for the remembrance of God is valuable. When the Ottomans converted it into a mosque, it continued its purpose for the glorification of God. So whether used as a cathedral or whether as a mosque, its function as a house of prayer continued. Its use as a space in which God's name is hymned, is lauded, is praised, that practice continues. Its purpose and intent as a space wherein God is worshipped also continued. When Kemal Ataturk converted the Hagia Sophia into a museum, he shut it down and then converted it into a museum, he effectively ended its purpose as a space of worship. And this is the greatest crime against God. The following passage of the Quran, verse 114 of Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah, comes to mind, where Allah says, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ مَنَعَ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ أَن يُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ وَسَعَى فِي خَرَابِهَا, which means, and who are more unjust, or who is more unjust than those who prevent the name of Allah from being mentioned or hymned or recited in his mosques and strives towards their destruction. The verse continues, أولئك ما كان لهم أن يدخلوها إلا خائفين لهم في الدنيا خزي ولهم في الآخرة عذاب عظيم, which means they shall not enter them, or it is not for them to enter them, these structures, except in fear. For them shall be a disgrace in this world, and the hereafter they will have a great torment. Now the word used for demolition or destruction, kharab, doesn't necessarily mean, or doesn't necessarily refer only to the demolition of the bricks and mortar of a space of worship. Bricks and mortar, brothers and sisters, can be repaired. And almost every old church or mosque has had to undergo repairs. The Kaaba had to be, was demolished and built up again because it was breaking down several times since the time that our Prophet Abraham built it. Even the Hagia Sophia had to undergo repairs during the Ottoman period to sustain its buttresses and supports. So kharab actually here means the demolition of its use as a space of worship. That is the primary crime from Allah's perspective. A museum, brothers and sisters, is a dead space. It's a spiritually dead space. I mean, not dead in a literal sense, but it is spiritually dead. And this is, in my judgment, the real meaning of kharab. And this is why what is important from a God-centric perspective is the spiritual life that takes place in a space. A museum is not a space of worship. A museum does not exist to glorify God. Rather, a museum, if it glorifies anything, it glorifies the acts of man rather than glorifying God. It glorifies the works of the architects in this case, the artisans and craftsmen who built it, who decorated it, who made the rugs that are in it, or the tiles that are in it. And it perhaps may tell us about how our predecessors worshipped. But a museum does not invite you to worship. It invites you not as a participant. It invites you as an observer. And that, brothers and sisters, is a key difference. Our work, brothers and sisters, is to continue the work of the prophets. We are what the prophet has called his spiritual heirs. As such, our work must be to invite people to the worship of God and to his remembrance. Now, while we certainly may be keen and solicitous of inviting people to understand our particular way of worshiping God, our more universal or more primary and more universal obligation is to urge people to worship God in the manner that they feel most comfortable with. Allah commands us, la ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion in religion. So, in other words, while at an individual level, we welcome people to adopt our faith of Islam and to join us in practicing our religion of Islam, at the universal level, our obligation is to urge people to worship the one God the way they are most comfortable with. If they are Christians, we urge them to be the very best Christians they can be. If they are Jewish, we should urge them to be the very best Jews they can be. If they are Hindus, the very best Hindus they can be, and the very best Buddhists they can be. Why? Because the ethical and moral aspects of all faith traditions are practically identical. No religion urges you to cheat, to steal, to kill, or to commit adultery, or to defraud people. And Allah affirms also that anyone who worships Allah sincerely, who believes in their accountability before Him on Judgment Day, and acts ethically, will receive Allah's mercy and be accepted into His acceptance. We have often repeated this verse, several verses, one of which is Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, verse 62, where Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Which means, indeed, those who believe, and those who are Jews, and those who are Christian, and the Sabians, whoever believes in God and the last day, and does righteousness, does good action, will have their reward with their Lord. No fear will there be concerning them, nor will they grieve. Now, they have no reason to be afraid, no reason to be upset. And another verse, which is also relevant to our discussion today, which is the 40th ayah, verse of Surah Al-Hajj, which is from number 22, Allah endorses the protection of all houses of worship, of all faiths, in the following words. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعَ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِيَعٌ وَصَلَوَاتٌ وَمَسَاجِدُ يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا وَلَيَنْصُرَنَّ اللَّهَ مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ. Which means, had Allah not restrained some people by means of others, monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques in which the names of Allah is much mentioned would have been demolished. And Allah will surely support those who support Him, for indeed Allah is powerful and mighty. From these two verses, brothers and sisters, we learn that Allah loves to hear Himself worshipped and praised in all languages, in all the ways that He revealed through all of His prophets and messengers. We should also bear in mind that when Christians visited our Prophet Muhammad in his mosque in Medina, he invited them to perform their prayers in his mosque when their times of prayer came. Yes, he was urging them to join his religion, but he did not prevent them from worshipping, even in his own mosque in Medina, their particular prayer. Think about that, brothers and sisters. The Prophet also issued covenants of protection to Christian churches and monasteries under Muslim rule in his lifetime. And his successors, especially Caliph Umar, extended this protection of the Muslim authorities over all Christian houses of worship and monasteries. And as I mentioned in my khutbahs of the last 2 weeks, Umar was the one who invited Jews to return and take up residence around 640 AD in Jerusalem after the Romans banished them in 70 AD. That was for like 570 years roughly, more than half a millennium. Jews were banished from Jerusalem. It was Muslims, it was Umar who invited them back. So what does this mean? This means our faith is not about destroying other faiths, but protecting them. Protecting them. Under the Ottomans, all houses of worship were protected. Monasteries, churches, synagogues, they were all protected. So, if we apply these verses, this prophetic hadith, and this precedent of the Prophet and the Caliph Umar, here's what I would suggest to the Turkish government regarding Hagia Sophia. Recraft the message around emphasizing the worship of God at Hagia Sophia. Now, the reversion is not from a museum to a mosque, but rather from a museum, a place where Allah's name was not mentioned, to a place where Allah's name is mentioned and praised. Start conducting Muslim prayers at Hagia Sophia as are planned. But also invite Orthodox Christians to worship and pray there as well. It is not at all difficult for the Turkish government to arrange the space within Hagia Sophia so that both Christians and Muslims can pray there in a way that is consistent with their respective beliefs. This way, they can honor and celebrate Hagia Sophia's history as a house of worship for both Christians and Muslims. There is ample space in the building. And the times and days of our worship differ, they don't overlap. Muslims have their weekly congregational prayers on Friday at high noon. Dhuhr is when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky. And Christians have their weekly mass typically on Sunday mornings. The Turkish government announced that using the Hagia Sophia as a mosque will not stop or interfere at all with the tourism that currently takes place, except, of course, during the time of the Muslim prayers, which means about 2 hours on Fridays. The number of people who attend the 5-time daily prayers don't usually fill the space, since most Muslims perform those prayers at their homes or places of work. So it's clear that the Hagia Sophia can still continue to serve as a tourist destination as well as a mosque. And there's no reason at all that the Hagia Sophia cannot also start functioning as a church, as a cathedral, as a place of worship for our Christian brothers and sisters as well. We humans are smart enough to do what we want when we have the will to do it. I repeat this point. We human beings are smart enough to do what we will when we have the will to do it. If President Erdogan, therefore, exercises his political will and instructs his nation to figure out how to arrange the space, how to arrange the timings of worship, so that the objectives of it being a house of worship for Muslims, for Christians, and that the tourists and those who make their livelihood from tourism will all be satisfied, I am absolutely convinced the Turkish people will find a way to make it happen. The Turkish people are intelligent enough, smart enough, savvy enough, and wise enough to find a way to make the Hagia Sophia function as a cathedral for our Orthodox brothers and sisters, as a mosque for our Muslim brothers and sisters, and fully as a tourist destination to continue providing the economic well-being of those who are dependent on the tourist economy. We say this, brothers and sisters, because Allah wants us all to worship Him. He wants us all to praise Him, to recite His names. So if Erdogan's action is presented not as about exalting Islam over Christianity, not over a competition between Islam and Christianity, but rather as an exalting the worship of the one God over an absence of worship, and inviting Orthodox Christians to join Muslims to worship together. I mean, not simultaneously together, but to worship at their times of worship, to conduct their authentic acts of worship. For us, Jummah on Fridays, the Mass on Sundays. What a climate. Imagine, brothers and sisters, what a climate of Muslim-Christian goodwill this would create. The fact is, brothers and sisters, Turkey has a long and rich history for both Christians and Muslims. Some believe that the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Jesus Christ, lived her last years near Ephesus, a town in modern Turkey, where many Christians still go for pilgrimage. Some even believe that she died there, and there is a little church or mosque which is claimed to be her burial place, although there's also a church in Jerusalem near Mount Olives, which many Muslims and Christians also believe is where she is buried. So there are two opinions on where Virgin Mary is buried. But the point is, they are both places of pilgrimage for Christians and for Muslims. The point is, Muslim and Christian beliefs theologically, geographically, strongly overlap. It therefore behooves us to honor this history, to honor this tradition, and to enliven it with our worship of the one God whom both communities worship. Turkey continues to be a major site of Christian pilgrimage and Muslim visitation. I mean, pilgrimage was not really a Hajj, but in the generic sense of the term pilgrimage. The famous Council of Nicaea, which most Christians know, that was where the Christian bishops decided what the canonical Gospels were, took place in Nicaea. Most people don't know that Nicaea is a town in Turkey, or maybe it was at that time maybe a village in Turkey, known today by its Turkish name, Iznik. Iznik is a place very famous today for its very, very beautiful and very expensive, by the way, tiles. The most beautiful tiles in the world are made in Iznik, and the most expensive ones because they are made from the powder of precious stones. They take precious stones like rubies and all these various other things and actually powder them, and they bake them. And these are works of art. These are not just normal tiles like your bathroom tiles, although you can use them for your bathroom tiles, but it costs you a pretty penny. I was pained by reading that one of the media reports described this act of converting Hagia Sophia to a mosque as an act of vengeance. Brothers and sisters, there's no space for vengeance in religion. Muhammad and Jesus are not competing against each other. Our Prophet Muhammad called Jesus his brother. They are both servants of God. It was all about God. So let us, brothers and sisters, make this act about God, not about Muhammad over Jesus or vice versa. Our call, therefore, is upon the Turkish government to craft it, to tweak this decision so it becomes not an act of vengeance, or not even seen as an act of vengeance, but it is seen as an act of worship and inclusion. For Allah has commanded us, brothers and sisters, to compete against one another in doing good works. For it is our good works, our amal salih, and the intentions of our actions, and the intentions also should be good intentions. It is for these intentions that Allah will reward us. So brothers and sisters, let's perfect our intentions. Let us urge, as well as we can, the Turkish government to act accordingly. And we pray to Allah that He will bless us, bless our communities, and bless the believers, all of them, Muslim and Christian, and of all faith traditions. Pray to Allah Ta'ala to answer our prayers. وَأَدْعُ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يَسْتَجِبْ لِي وَلَكُمْ. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له المتعالي على المشاركة والمشاكلة لسائر البشر، ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا محمدا صلى الله عليه وسلم عبده ورسوله النبي المعتبر. واعلموا أن الله تعالى صلى على النبي قديما، فقال تعالى: ولم يزل قائلا عليما وآمرا حكيما، تنبيها لكم وتعليما وتشريفا لقدر النبي وتعظيما. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. ورضى عن الأربعة الخلفاء السادة الحنفاء المميزين بعده بالرعاية والولاية والاصطفاء، ذوي القدر العالي والفخر الجلي، ساداتنا وموالينا وأئمتنا أبي بكر الصديق وعمر وعثمان وعلي. ورد عن السبطين السعيدين السنن الشهيدين القمرين النورين، سن شباب أهل الجنة في الجنة وريحان نبي هذه الأمة، الإمام أبي محمد الحسن والإمام أبي عبد الله الحسين، وعن أمهما فاطمة الزهراء، وعن جدتهما خديجة الكبرى، وعن عائشة أم المؤمنين، وعن بقية أزواج رسول الله أجمعين، وعن التابعين وتابع التابعين وتابعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات، إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين. اللهم أيد الإسلام وأعلي وانصر كلمة الحق والإيمان. اللهم اجعل خير زماننا آخرة، وخير أعمالنا خواتيمها، وخير أيامنا يوم لقائك، وارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا. اللهم ارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا. اللهم ارفع مقتك وغضبك عنا، ولا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك فينا ولا يرحمنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم أصلح أحوالنا وبلغنا مما يرضيك آمالنا، واختم بالصالحات أعمالنا وبالسعادة آجالنا، وتوفنا وأنت راض عنا يا رب العالمين. أسأل الله العظيم رب العرش الكريم أن يغفر لي ولكم والمسلمين أجمعين. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي، يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم وأقم الصلاة.